The first stone hits the gate at dusk. Not hard enough to break anything. Not thrown with fury. It strikes iron and falls harmlessly to the ground, as if whoever cast it wanted the sound more than the damage. She hears it from the upper corridor and stops walking. The sound echoes oddly through the keep, followed by another, then another. Not a barrage. A rhythm. Slow. Measured. Deliberate. A signal. She turns toward the nearest window and looks down into the outer courtyard. A crowd has gathered. Not a mob. Not yet, but enough bodies pressed close together to feel intentional. Merchants. Dock workers. A few faces she recognizes from council petitions. Others she does not. They are not shouting. They are watching. That didn't take long, she murmurs. Behind her, footsteps approach, unhurried but purposeful. They're early, the Duke says. She does not turn immediately. Her eyes remain on the gathering below. They know you'll be watching, she replies. They want you to see restraint before anger. Yes, he agrees, which means someone has coached them. She finally turns. He stands a few paces behind her, posture composed, expression unreadable. No armor, no cloak, just the dark tunic he wears when he intends to be seen as a ruler rather than a warrior. You could still stop this, she says. Yes, and you won't. No. The honesty between them no longer surprises her. She moves closer to the window again, her reflection faint in the glass beside the crowd below. They're not angry because of me, she says. They're angry because I represent change. And because I chose you publicly. She glances at him. You didn't have to. Yes, he replies. I did. Another stone strikes the gate. Louder this time. Still not violent. Still restrained. The Duke steps beside her now, close enough that she feels the warmth of him without being touched. Half the council warned me this would happen, he says. The other half hoped it would. And you ignored them all. No, he says. I listened. Then I decided. She studies his profile, the calm authority there, the steadiness that has carried the city through worse than this. They're calling it favoritism, she says. Yes. And betrayal. Yes. And weakness. He lets out a quiet breath. That one amuses me the least. A voice rises from the courtyard below. Not shouting. Speaking. Someone has stepped forward, an elder from the river ward. She thinks. The words are indistinct from this height, but the tone carries. Measured. Accusatory. They're asking you to choose peace, she says. Yes. And peace, in this case, means stepping away from me. Yes. She turns fully toward him now. And if you did, he meets her gaze directly. They would settle. For now. And the cost. He does not answer immediately. She already knows it. They would learn, she says softly. That pressure works. Yes. And that your choices can be bent. Yes. And that anyone close to you is expendable. The Duke's jaw tightens. That, he says quietly, is why I won't. Another stone hits the gate. This one lands closer to the guard's feet. She exhales slowly. You know this won't stay symbolic, she says. They'll escalate. Yes. And you're still choosing this. Yes. She studies him for a long moment, then nods once. All right, she says. Then let's not pretend this is about me. He lifts an eyebrow. Explain. This is about who gets to decide the city's direction, she says. And whether that decision is made quietly or openly. He watches her carefully now. You're suggesting. I stand with you, she says. Not behind you. Not hidden. And not softened. Silence stretches between them, thick with implication. That will make it worse, he says. She meets his gaze without flinching. Only in the short term. The Duke considers her words with the same gravity he would give any military council. You understand what that costs, he says. Yes. And you accept it. Yes. Another voice rises below. Louder this time. The crowd shifts, bodies pressing closer together. They're calling for a response, he says. She nods. Then give them one. He turns toward the door. Stay here, he says. She reaches out and catches his sleeve. Don't, she says quietly. Not this time. He stops. They'll tear you apart in speculation if you speak alone, she continues. Let them see what you chose. He looks down at her hand on his sleeve. Not possessive. Anchoring. Slowly he nods. Then we go together, he says. They descend the stairs side by side. The noise grows louder with each step. Not shouting, but expectation. The guards at the gate stiffen when they see the Duke approach, hands tightening on their spears. The crowd stills the moment he comes into view. He does not raise his voice. He does not demand silence. He simply stands. And beside him, she stands too. The murmur ripples through the courtyard like wind through grain. There it is. The talk. The speculation. The judgment. The Duke waits until it settles. I hear your concerns, he says calmly, and I will address them. A few voices rise, then fall again as his gaze sweeps the crowd. This city has known peace, he continues, and it has known survival. The difference between the two has never been comfort. It has been courage. He gestures, not toward her, but toward the walls. You asked me to choose peace, he says. But peace that requires silence is not peace. It is postponement. A murmur ripples through the crowd. She stands here, he says, voice steady. Not because she is favored, but because she is capable. Someone shouts something from the back. Indistinct. Accusatory. The Duke does not respond to it. Instead, she steps forward. Just one step. I did not ask for his protection, she says clearly. And I did not receive it quietly. The crowd shifts. I earn my place by competence, she continues. And I keep it by responsibility. A pause. If that unsettles you, she says, then the problem is not proximity. The silence that follows is heavier than noise. The Duke does not interrupt, does not rescue, does not soften. He lets her finish. You may speak, she says. You may protest. But you do not get to decide for him who stands beside him. A long moment passes. Then the elder from the river ward bows his head. Not deeply, but enough. The first concession. The Duke turns slightly toward her, his voice low enough that only she hears. You've just made yourself impossible to remove quietly, he says. She looks at him. Good. The crowd does not disperse immediately, but it does not escalate. The stones stop. And when the Duke finally turns back toward the keep, he does not step away from her. He walks with her, side by side, letting the city see exactly what he has chosen. The city does not riot that night. That, in itself, is a decision. By the time the torches are lit along the inner wall, the crowd has thinned into clusters rather than chaos. Conversations continue in low, heated tones. People argue, but they argue with each other, not with the gates. The Duke watches from the parapet as the last of them disperse. They're deciding how angry they're allowed to be, she says quietly beside him. Yes, he replies, and who they're allowed to blame. She folds her arms against the cooling air. That won't stay aimed at me. No, he agrees. It will shift. And land where? He does not answer immediately. You, she says after a moment. Yes. She exhales slowly. Good. That draws his attention. You're pleased? I'm relieved, she says. If it stayed with me, it would mean you were retreating. I don't retreat, he replies. I know. That is the problem. They return inside together, but not to his rooms. Instead, he leads her into the long map hall overlooking the eastern wall, a space rarely used except during siege planning. The table there is massive, carved with grooves from decades of use. Candles burn in iron brackets along the walls, illuminating inked routes, supply lines, alliances. This is where the city's future is argued when things turn dangerous. The door closes behind them. Not locked, just shut. They'll come for me through the council, he says. Quietly, respectfully, with words like stability and tradition. And compromise, she adds. Yes. And you'll be asked to give something up. He meets her gaze. Yes. She leans back against the table, studying the maps without really seeing them. You could still separate us publicly, she says. Not privately, just symbolically. Yes. And it would calm them. For a time. And it would cost you. Credibility, he replies. Authority. And you. The last word lands heavier than the others. She does not look away. You're being pressed from both sides, she says. Yes. And you're choosing pressure. Yes. She studies him carefully now. Not the Duke, not the ruler, but the man who has made a decision that cannot be undone without consequence. You didn't choose me because you wanted to, she says. He does not interrupt. You chose me because it was the harder path, she continues. And because retreat would teach the wrong lesson. Yes. And that terrifies half the people who benefit from the old way. Yes. She lets out a quiet breath. Good. That makes him smile, just barely. The next morning proves her right. The council convenes early, without ceremony. When she enters the chamber, she is not announced. No one pretends not to see her. They simply adjust. Some stiffen. Some avert their eyes. Some watch her openly now, assessing. She takes her place beside the Duke again. Not behind. Not in front. Beside. The first challenge comes wrapped in courtesy. "My lord," says Counselor Bram, his voice smooth, "the city is unsettled. We must consider appearances." "Yes," the Duke replies. "We must." Bram inclines his head. "Your association, however well-intentioned, has been interpreted as favoritism." The Duke does not look at her. "That interpretation is convenient," he says. "It is also dangerous," Bram replies. "There are trade routes at risk. Alliances that rely on continuity." "Continuity," the Duke echoes. "Or compliance." A murmur ripples through the room. Another counselor speaks. "We are not asking you to dismiss her," she says carefully. "Only to reconsider the visibility." The Duke's gaze sharpens. "She will not be hidden," he says. "Then perhaps," Bram suggests, "she might step away voluntarily." The room goes very still. She does not speak. She waits. The Duke turns to her then, not to ask, not to plead, to offer. "You may," he says simply. The room holds its breath. She meets his gaze. "And if I do," she asks quietly, "what lesson does the city learn?" "That pressure works," he replies. "And if I don't, that choice is not negotiable." She turns back to the council. "I will not step away," she says evenly. "And I will not pretend my presence is temporary." A few counselors shift uncomfortably. Bram's expression tightens. "You're escalating," he says. "No," she replies. "I'm clarifying." The Duke does not interrupt. She continues. "This city does not need peace bought with erasure," she says. "It needs leadership that can withstand scrutiny." A pause. "If my presence unsettles you," she adds, "then examine why." Silence. The Duke rises then, not abruptly, but decisively. "This discussion is over," he says. "The matter is settled." Bram opens his mouth. The Duke does not let him speak. "Those who cannot work within this reality," he continues, "are free to reconsider their positions." The implication is unmistakable. When the council adjourns, the fallout is immediate. Allies withdraw invitations. A trade guild delays negotiations. A message arrives from the Southern Alliance requesting clarification. The pressure builds, but it builds around them, not between them. That evening, they stand together again on the eastern wall, watching the city glow under torchlight. "You could have let me take the blow," she says quietly. "No. You could have framed it as my refusal." "No. And you didn't." "No." She looks at him. "You're burning bridges." "Yes. And you're doing it deliberately." "Yes." She exhales slowly, the weight of it settling fully now. "This will change everything," she says. "Yes. And you're still not asking anything of me." He turns to her fully. "Because I don't want compliance," he says. "I want alignment." The word lands carefully. "And if I change my mind, then I adapt," he replies. "But I don't undo." She studies his face, the certainty there, the refusal to bargain away what he has chosen. "That," she says softly, "is why they're afraid." "Yes. And why I'm not." They stand there as the bells mark the hour. Not late. Not early. Precisely on time. And the city, watching from below, begins to understand something crucial. This is not a scandal that will burn itself out. This is a shift. The offer arrives at dawn. It is not delivered by messenger. It is delivered by silence. She notices it first in the way the city wakes differently. The absence of the usual calls from the river ward. The delayed opening of the eastern market. The uneasy stillness that settles over the streets like a held breath. When she steps onto the balcony overlooking the inner wall, she sees fewer figures moving below than she should at this hour. "They've coordinated," she says. "Yes," the Duke replies beside her. "And they've decided to be polite about it." That, she knows, is worse. The invitation follows shortly after. A sealed notice requesting the Duke's presence at a private conclave before midday. No accusations. No threats. Just the language of urgency dressed as courtesy. "They want to end this without noise," she says. "They want to end it with terms," he replies. She studies his profile, the calm precision of him unchanged. "And the terms?" He does not answer immediately. "They'll offer stability," he says at last. "Trade assurances. A public statement of unity. Quiet support from the guilds. And in exchange? They'll want distance," he says. "Not just from you. From the idea that choice can look like this." She exhales slowly. Then they've misunderstood, she says. Yes, he agrees. But they won't believe that until I say it where they can't ignore it. The conclave is held not in the council chamber, but in the old guild hall by the river, a deliberate choice. Neutral ground. Public adjacent. A place where agreements are meant to look communal even when they are not. When they arrive, she notices the absence immediately. No guards lining the entrance. No crowds. Just representatives, guild masters, ward elders, a few counselors who had not spoken openly before. They are seated in a wide circle, waiting. The Duke does not take the central chair. He chooses one beside her. That alone unsettles them. Thank you for coming, says Master Helvine, the eldest of the guild heads. We hoped for a quieter conversation. So did I, the Duke replies evenly. But that opportunity passed. Helvine nods, as if conceding a point. We're here to restore balance. Balance, the Duke echoes. Or predictability? A ripple of discomfort moves through the circle. This city thrives on continuity, Helvine says, on knowing what to expect. And when expectation calcifies, the Duke replies, it becomes a cage. She watches the faces around them, some calculating, some wary, some genuinely uncertain. We are not your enemies, Helvine says. But you've disrupted something fragile. Yes, the Duke agrees. And necessary. A pause. The unrest will spread, another voice adds. Unless reassured. And what reassures you? The Duke asks. Helvine clears his throat. A statement. Public. Measured. Indicating that recent developments were temporary. The word hangs there. Temporary. And by developments. The Duke says calmly. You mean her. He does not look at her when he says it. He does not need to. Helvine hesitates. We mean the visibility. No, the Duke replies. You mean the choice. Silence settles heavily. If you step back, Helvine says carefully, turning to her, no one would think less of you. She meets his gaze coolly. I'm not concerned with that. And if you, my lord, Helvine continues, turning back to the Duke, frame this as a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding, the Duke says. And if peace could be preserved, at the cost of erasure, the Duke finishes. The word lands hard. You speak as though this is personal, Helvine says. The Duke's gaze sharpens. It is structural, he replies. Which is why it matters. Another elder leans forward. You're choosing conflict. No, the Duke says. I'm choosing clarity. She feels it then. The moment when the room realizes the negotiation is not working. This is your last opportunity, Helvine says quietly, to end this without fracture. The Duke stands. The movement is unhurried, but it carries weight. Peace offered at the price of silence is not peace, he says. It is obedience. He turns slightly, aligning himself fully with her. I chose her, he continues, not as a symbol, not as a provocation, but as a partner in governance. A murmur ripples through the room. And I will not unchoose that, he says. Not for calm, not for approval, and not for the comfort of those who mistake stability for justice. The Duke looks around the circle now, meeting each gaze in turn. This city will adjust, he says, where it will expose exactly who fears adjustment. He turns to leave. She rises with him. No one stops them. The fracture comes 3 days later. Not violent. Strategic. A trade route closes. A shipment is delayed. A guild announces it will pause cooperation pending review. The pressure tightens. The Duke responds not with force, but with transparency. He convenes the city assembly. Open air. Open gates. Anyone who wishes to attend may do so. The square fills by midday. She stands beside him on the raised stone platform, the city stretching out before them. Faces upturned, expressions mixed with curiosity, apprehension, hope. The Duke does not shout. He does not dramatize. This city has been offered peace, he says calmly, and asked to pay for it with silence. A stir runs through the crowd. I refuse, he continues, to rule a city that demands invisibility from those who serve it. He gestures toward her, not as introduction, but as acknowledgement. She does not stand here because of proximity, he says. She stands here because of capability. She steps forward then, just enough to be seen clearly. And I stand here, she says, her voice carrying, because hiding has never kept a city safe. The crowd listens. We are being told that calm requires sameness, she continues. That peace requires erasure. A pause. I reject that. The Duke resumes. Those who wish to withdraw trade are free to do so, he says. We will adapt. A murmur. Those who wish to test our resolve are free to try, he continues. We will respond. The silence that follows is not empty. It is considering. A man near the front raises his voice. What if this divides us? The Duke meets his gaze. Then the division was already there, he says. I'm simply refusing to pretend otherwise. The city does not erupt. It does not cheer. It absorbs. By nightfall, the first trade guild reverses its pause. By morning, another follows. Not because they are convinced, because they are pragmatic, and because the city did not fall apart. A week later, she walks through the Eastern Market alone, not unguarded, but unshadowed. People look at her openly now, some with approval, some with resentment, none with the calculating interest she had felt before. That is the difference. She meets the Duke at the top of the inner stair at dusk. You burned the offer, she says quietly. Yes. And peace survived anyway. Yes. She studies him. You chose me over peace, she says. He shakes his head. I chose a different definition of it. She considers that. And you let the city talk. Yes. She steps closer, not touching, not needing to. It's still talking, she says. Yes. And it always will. Yes. She smiles faintly. Good. They stand together as the bells mark the hour, clear, resonant, heard by all. This was never a story about romance hidden behind stone walls. It was about choosing partnership in full view, about letting the city see exactly what kind of peace they were willing to live with, and about understanding that sometimes choosing someone openly is not an act of indulgence. It is an act of leadership.